Well, good evening. Ooh, a little cold here today, but welcome to another episode of Communications and Cigars. I'm your host, John Kruk, and here we are. Well, we are live again as sort of a request, kind of. This week, I hope a little bit better. We got a different computer. We got a better internet connection, so we're going to be doing a little bit better here. So, of course, I get all these pop-ups, right? Get a new computer, antivirus, and everything like that on there. But, anyways, good evening to all. I guess let me start out first by saying this. I think it would be fair for those of you that do know me. Obviously, I have a lot of good friends that I've met along the way with amateur radio and everything like that. If you are from Minnesota or if you are anything like that in the area, and maybe in particular like Isanti County or stuff like that, I was saddened. I heard the news this evening. Joe Showalter, N0JOL, who I happened to meet down in Hamcation. Unfortunately, he became a silent key. Obviously unexpected. I mean, you never expect anything. But I was very saddened to hear that Joe N0JOL became a silent key this morning, and stuff like that. So my thoughts and prayers go out to the family. I'm sorry to hear that. And yeah, there's nothing much more I can really go ahead and say about that. So welcome to the second episode kind of thing. I had a lot of good feedback from the first one, so I figured let's go ahead and do a second one to see what happens again here. And so I have my cigar, and I've picked a topic for this evening. But before that, I want to go ahead and I want to say thank you to someone. Alrighty, and this person sent me the cigar that I'm smoking tonight. I've been smoking for a little bit here. And they sent me a nice little letter. They sent it to me as a gift, as a surprise. And I was very thankful, very fortunate enough that they actually sent me one. And included in the note, I want to say the call signs, or the call sign of the person, but I don't know if they want it out or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read the note, and if they are watching, then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I will go ahead and read it. They will know who it is, and if they want to, they can send me a Facebook message, or they can send me an instant message or something like that on there. You can go ahead and they can do it from there. So the messages or the note that was included in it was, unfortunately, the embargo on Cuban cigars is still in place. I cannot ever get them in Miami. I keep asking though. Enjoy. DSL. I'll put it as that, DSL. So if you're watching out there, DSL, you know who you are. I appreciate it. I am enjoying this one tonight. Thank you to you very much here. So it's quite good, quite delicious here. So let's go ahead and talk about communication, shall we? So a lot of people said after the first episode that we did that it was kind of fun. It was kind of interesting. It was like a kind of a chat of a coffee kind of thing, as one put it. It's like sort of like coffee after the club meeting or whatever. And I thought, we need to talk about communications of some sort. So tonight I've been playing with my, if you're a scanner listener, I have an SDS 100, so I was playing with that a little bit prior to actually going live here. But with that being said, I kind of picked an interesting topic, and I guess the topic that I picked up, and the reason I picked it up was largely based on the fact of, like, I don't know, I just thought it was kind of be interesting to talk about it, because it's changing so much, and it really, really kind of is an interesting one, because I know some people, when I say what I'm going to say about communications, they're going to be like, oh yeah, totally understand that. And tonight I thought, hey, let's chat about push-to-talk over cellular. That's an interesting thing. So it was actually June 30th, 2013, where I kind of cried a little bit that day. At midnight, If you remember, there was a company called Nextel, and Nextel was a push-to-talk service. Now, it was actually iDen technology. But basically what it did is, and this is not a Nextel phone. I was going to dig up a Nextel phone for it, but basically what it is, it was like a cellular type device. Towards the end they had more flip phones, but before they had bigger devices. But it had a push-to-talk button on the side, and basically you push to talk on there, and then it would go through the system. Now, Nextel used 800 megahertz frequencies, so it was kind of an interesting thing like that. But nevertheless, what happened is that Nextel, I think Nextel was ahead of its time. I really do. And if you had Nextel or something like that, then by all means, pop in here, say if you did or didn't, say if you what you did like or what you didn't like about it. And what was interesting about it is that it offered people like instant communication versus like delayed communication. Like sometimes cell phones, you open up the phone, dial the person's number, see if they're there, or if they have another number, those kind of things like that. Nextel was unique in that regards, in that it offered this instant form of communications. So if you actually take a look at the origin of Nextel, Nextel started out way back in the day called Fleet Call. Now, Fleet Call was an SMR 800 megahertz trunk radio system. And this trunk radio system basically allowed you to connect basically through either like basically like a telephone. It acted like, or it was truly a trunk radio system, an 800 megahertz trunk radio system. Well, that was actually up where I lived by Hayward up there. So what was kind of cool about that is people had like cell phones before it had cell phones, because they called them interconnects at that time. So that was the cool part. The interconnect was there, so you could actually reverse call through the system. Well, then as time went on, they lost their I don't know if they lost their licenses or what exactly happened, but eventually Fleet Call dissolved because there was Nextel itself that was born out of Fleet Call, and areas where Nextel wasn't there, Fleet Call was still running there as best as they could, and then they actually translated into Nextel partners. Anyways, what was kind of cool about Nextel is that, like I said, is anybody could use it, and basically if anybody knows about anything about like trunk radio systems and all those kind of things like that on there, you'll know that you had a fleet number, you had an area number, fleet number, like an ID, like an individual ID number. Alrighty. Well, that's what kind of Fleet Call had, and that's kind of what Nextel had. And what you could do is you could communicate people within your fleet. So there are always all these fleets and everything like that. I actually remember I was actually on a couple different fleets. I was on Fleet 23, and then Fleet 74 or something was mine, where they put a lot of them. So they had like the Builders Network. So if you were a contractor, you got put on the Builders Network fleet. Alrighty, and you could talk amongst your fleet of people. Now that could be anybody in that case on there, but the point of the matter was, it was really cool. And my wife and I, well, at the time, my girlfriend and I, fiance, had it. Okay, and we would use it instantaneous communications. And one kind of thing that was interesting about it was like really regionalized. Like, for example, like by the Twin Cities where I'm at, it was one of those things where it was like, okay, you had it in the Twin Cities, and then it only went out so far, and then Nextel dropped. Nextel's big claim to fame was that you would not have any roaming. The reason you wouldn't have any roaming is because Nextel was a proprietary technology using iDen technology. And iDen technology had it so you had to use iDen networks. You couldn't use CDMA. You couldn't use GSM at the time. You couldn't use anything like that. Or actually, it was pre-GSM. It was actually TDMA, the old AT&T things. So you couldn't use anybody's network. So yeah, you didn't have roaming because you couldn't roam. But that was what kind of the cool part about Nextel was. You knew your area, you knew your coverage, and once again, you flipped it open, I did, normal times, and they had the little chirp like Motorola radios do, and, and you just were able to communicate instantly. But as time went on, Nextel I think kind of grew too fast, and it was ahead of its time, really, because IDEN stood for Enhanced Data Integrated Digital, or I'm sorry, Integrated Dispatch Enhanced Network. That's what it was, if I remember correctly. And if that's not correct, if someone's watching this, they can drop it in the comments. But I believe it was in Integrated Dispatched Enhanced Network. And basically what it was is allowed you to do text messaging. It allowed you to do the voice communications with the two-way side. It allowed you to have a cell phone also, too. Didn't really have data back then. We weren't at smartphones. Towards the end, they started to get into Blackberries and stuff like that, but it was not heavy data-concentric devices like smartphones and PDAs and everything like we have today. So, Nextel really took off. A lot of people used it. Law enforcement used it. Public safety used it because it was like a nice backup, really, for the radios, because it was for the most part encrypted, so you couldn't take a scanner and listen to Nextel communications. Okay, you couldn't really do TDMA, CDMA at that time, but really Nextel was really kind of encrypted for the most part. So a lot of law enforcement used it, like fire on our ambulance service. We used Nextel a lot. That was it for a while, and it was so much easier because if you didn't want something to go out across the county channel, or you needed to talk about something on the county channel, you could do it on the Nextel. Well, anyways, getting back, we're going to fast forward in the Nextel time to once again, I think it was probably the mid-2000s, about 2005 or so, then Sprint bought out Nextel. And everybody was kind of like, what's going to happen there? Really, what's going to happen? Because Nextel was very niche, is the best way to put it. You know, you really had a specific purpose. If you had coverage in the area through Nextel, that's what you did. That's what you used. You used it in that area because you weren't going to use it anywhere else because it wasn't going to work anywhere else. Okay, so Sprint came along and they really kind of took a look at it and said, how can we go ahead? How can we leverage it? How can we make it better? Well, one of the ways they thought it could make it better was to take the actual voice of Nextel and do away with it. They said, let's Sprint ride the actual phone calls and then let Nextel do the two-way. So basically you were using PCS 1900 megahertz on the system. So you were like using the Sprint network for voice, and then you were using the Nextel system for two-way radio. So they came up with this hybrid phone, and I remember having one. It was like the IC 602 or 600 or something like that. Really wonky phone. Really pain in the butt phone, okay? Because you would have varying coverage. There'd be areas where you'd have Sprint coverage and you'd have no two-way, or you'd have two-way coverage on the Nextel side with no Sprint coverage. Well, anyways, as time went on, Sprint really did a buyout for Nextel, largely based on the fact that it wanted to get up the spectrum. It wanted to eat the spectrum that Nextel had. Nextel had a ton of 800 megahertz spectrum, and the interesting part about it is that, you know, at that time in that whole 800 megahertz band, you had Verizon fighting for areas, you had AT&T, and remember, there weren't competitive markets. So in some cases, in some areas, if you didn't have Verizon, you went along and you had, let's say, like U.S. Cellular, is it U.S. Cellular? Yeah, U.S. Cellular, or there's a few other ones that are out there. I can't think of them now, but anyways, you had those companies that would trade off. So in there, you basically had the three main nationwide carriers in there, and a lot of little local carriers too. Don't get me wrong. And you had Nextel. Well, Nextel bumped up a lot against public safety. And if you remember, if you're a scanner listener, buffer, that kind of thing, that you remember hearing about the rebanding, the 800 megahertz rebanding, and that was really because of Nextel and a little bit of Cellular. And kind of do it that way there. So with that being said, they really went after it, and that was the weird part. They really went after it, and unfortunately, it came that they made the announcement, which everybody kind of knew was coming. I mean, I saw the writing on the wall, in my opinion, because at that time, I kind of had a feeling that's what was going to happen, because that 800 megahertz spectrum was so precious. And what happened? Well, June 30th, 2013 at midnight, 12:01 a.m. to be exact, Sprint shut down the Nextel network. Phones went dark. I wasn't up for it, but I still had an old Nextel phone. Went to bed on the 29th, went along, and it was still connecting to a local tower here. Not many towers. They were slowly turning things off big time. There was one tower, mile marker 16, I-94 in Wisconsin. It's now on the left-hand side. Now it's it's T-Mobile tower now, actually. But anyways, they went along, and it was still active on there. I woke up about 9 a.m. on the 30th, I think it was, turned on the phone, and it sat there, and no signal. So, a little bit of a sad story. Now, well, good evening, Endolf. I see you're in there. Coke Zero in Communications. You know what? We'll get you in. How about this? We'll get you in, and then you'll be my co-host. Okay, you can do the co-host. You'll take care of the Coke Zero, and I'll take care of the cigars, and we'll talk about communications. Anyways, so what was Nextel? Nextel was in essence the emergence of push-to-talk, PTT. As a matter of fact, side funny note, I always thought it was funny. Nextel actually tried to trademark the term PTT. Okay, it was hilarious. They actually took it and they went along and they tried to trademark the thing PTT, and it got thrown out of court. It had to go through court, but it got thrown out of court because they said PTT is a 3-digit acronym. Okay, but what's the 3-digit acronym for is push to talk. It's a word. You can't. It's like trademarking the word "what" is kind of what it turned out to be. So they said no, you can't trademark it. So they said you can't trademark it. You can't do that. So that whole thing died. But that's what they said. PTT, that used to be the big thing, and all that jazz. So after Nextel went down, there were many horrid attempts, is the only way I can describe it, of trying to do a push to talk. But in this time, Nextel wasn't really push to talk over cellular. It was actually truly when you used your Nextel device, it actually carved out a channel on the tower for your communication to take place. So when you pushed a push to talk button, it wasn't using like data like we use data now. It didn't packetize it and send it as a data stream up to the tower. No, it actually opened up a channel, and instead of dialing a number, in essence your fleet and group and digital ID number was that, okay, it created and opened up the tower for you. So with that being said, many different things came and went and tried to, imitate but could never do it. And there's some Kodiak platforms and all those kind of things like that on there. So we now started to see this resurgence over the last, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 years you can even kind of push. Where now everybody's talking about like push to talk. Oh, I have the ability to do push to talk in my phone. Push to talk on my phone and abilities and everything like that. Well, now push to talk is now considered like PTToC, which is push to talk over cellular, or POC, which is push to talk over cellular, another acronym on there. But the interesting part about it is the resurgence of it. And I say resurgence of it because people are starting to go and realize, man, this is a great way to be able to communicate quickly and to communicate with low setup time, low latency, and everything on there. Now, there are numerous different push-to-talk platforms out there. And it's funny because if you think about 2013 to where we're at now, that's a pretty substantial gap. I mean, in 2 years we'll be at 10 years since Nextel's been, RIP Nextel. But it's so funny because now, we have people that were young kids that didn't really know what Nextel was. Mom or dad maybe used them or something like that. I mean, if you take a look ago 10 years myself, I mean, I was using it in the two-way radio business. And what was interesting about it then is that it was easier to do that than to actually have our own two-way radio network system that was up and running. So with that, that's what it was. But now everybody's coming back with like a push-to-talk solution. And, you have different things. So like, public safety is now being like, they have ES chat is one of them that's being taught. And then you have FirstNet, has their AT&T, like I think AT&T has ATTE PTT, and Verizon has a PTT app, those kind of things like that on there. So everybody's kind of doing it, and everybody's like, "Oh wow, this is great! This is great! Wow, what great technology!" And it's like, well, we had that 10 years ago, but we didn't know it. We didn't really utilize it, or we weren't able to use it. By the way, if you're hearing, it's actually I'm on my porch, thank goodness. So I'll tilt it back there. You can see I'm on my covered porch, but you can probably see in the background. It's starting to rain, and every once in a while there's a little bit of lightning. So the water you hear is my gutter. So so don't worry about that. I'm not actually going to pee. But it was just so interesting how that's kind of coming into resurgence. And now people are saying, well, you can connect up your push-to-talk solutions or a push-to-talk app with radio networks. You can do that back then with Nextel. It really wasn't too heavily utilized. It was basically like you had a push-to-talk device, which was your phone or your two-way, like a Nextel device, okay? And then, obviously, this isn't radio, but you had a radio, and you had it separately. And what it really kind of was being used back then was for, detectives off duty, or paramedics off duty, chiefs off duty, or stuff like that. They have their device, they have everything like that, they carry that with them. They don't need to have the radio on. They can just have it, boom, go, and proceed from there. Now, with this push to talk over cellular, we're starting to see like company names like Cellular is a good one example out there, and other ones where there's free apps, which gives you limited functionality, and then there are paid or commercial aspects of it, or public safety priced or specialty ones. Where now what you can do is you can interconnect this stuff together, which, I don't know, that's pretty cool. But we are kind of doing it. And on the amateur side of things, we have a bunch of people that are, working with push-to-talk, connections and interconnectivity. Being able to take your smartphone and be able to talk on your amateur radio network. Yeah, okay, that's one of them. But then you also have, if we take a look at it, go even further, not only do you have push-to-talk on there, GMRS operators that want to talk back to their home repeaters, they're using or having push-to-talk. And man, is it coming down now? Holy cow. I hope I'm not getting drowned out too much here. But you have these things, which I think, like I said, is pretty cool. And it's just funny how, I guess, we've evolved over time. And I would even go ahead to the point in saying revolved. And what I mean by that is that, we had this, we had trunked SMR that had the backwards compatibility to take a radio system and to have the interconnect on there to make a telephone call. Then we evolved into, now Nextel sort of was more, there's a cellular service, it's got a two-way radio feature in there. And then that went away. And then now we're kind of revolving back to, hey, here's the deal, where we have cellular devices that use data, and it can be done, on smartphones, it can be done on flip phones, dumb phones, whatever the case may be, that you can now have this, I got a phone, and then also I have this ability to push to talk. And the nice thing is, it's carrier agnostic, is that how we want to say it? Where I could have a phone on Verizon, but someone could have a phone on AT&T and download the app, and we can communicate with one another. If it's one of those kind of carrier diversified kind of applications on there. But now it's funny because now I'm even starting to see we're going back to the full gamut. So we went from radio that has phone, then we went to device that for the most part was a phone that had a radio built into it. We went nothing. Now we're back to telephone devices that have a radio kind of esque part of it. And now I'm even starting to see more as we're evolving, as you're going to hear the train too, that we're starting to more and more evolve into one where people are getting back into, hey, I want a two-way radio that I might be able to connect out with the phone, or I might be able to connect out to someone who has a device, not an actual two-way radio. So you're starting to see a lot of that on there. Good example. Down, where I live here is an electric company, St. Croix Electric Company. Their radio network is part of a bigger radio network that a power company, distribution company. They don't do residential service. They put up this big radio network. It's a DMR Tier 3 system. All right, and with that DMR Tier 3 system, they wanted people, like the admin staff, the operations managers, these kind of things like that. They wanted to allow them to be able to communicate with field staff without covering the radio or have coverage where maybe the network or system didn't have it. So that's where they integrated, because they went with a Motorola system, Motorola Wave technology. Okay? And Wave technology is just that. You have a cell phone device, you put an app on there, now you can connect it to two-way radio. So it's interesting how that has evolved, how that push-to-talk kind of technology has come back around. Be interesting whether you're watching this, whether you're doing it live now, or whether you're actually later on. If you put any comments, let me know, just out of curiosity, for just chatting stuff. If you've ever used Nextel, if you do use a push-to-talk type of technology out there, whether it be for public safety, whether it be for whatever, personal use, that kind of thing like that on there. Personally, my family, we use Zello. We also use Zello for our EMS service because it works for us on there. So, that is that, once again, we're kind of getting back to that resurgence on there. We use Zello for first responders for that. But at home, for my family, I use theirs. So, once again, if I'm not in range of the repeater, or I want to talk about something I can't on amateur radio, or I want to talk about something a little more private that I'm going to use with GMRS license, or I'm unable to communicate on my business radio frequencies, then you know what? I can go ahead and I can use this quick device. And better yet, I can also use it with, it doesn't matter, whether it be with my daughters, whether it be, other families away and everything like that. So, just kind of the interesting topic for tonight. As I'm enjoying my last little bit of cigar, and finally, of course, the rain's running down here. But otherwise than that, let me also too know, I got a lot of comments and feedback of people saying, hey, this is a great idea, they still want to do it and stuff. Let me know. This guard keeps going on. I'm talking too much. It's a little damp here tonight too. One of the suggestions that someone made was saying, hey, maybe I might try to put this on YouTube also too, as in like stream it through YouTube. So tell me what you're interested in. Tell me what you think about it. Tell me if 8 o'clock is a good time. It's kind of fun communicating with people. Like I said, during this past week here, I had a lot of people that came back and said, hey, John, it was kind of cool. Like I said, hey, it was kind of interesting, fun to do that kind of thing. And, yeah, I'd like to hear what you have to say. Maybe we can even try to open up one of these chat rooms on Facebook that they have now and all that kind of stuff like that. Which social media is interesting. Social media is weird, but it's also interesting there. So, with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and finish my cigar here. I got a little bit left on there. Thank you for everybody that viewed this, the second one of Communications and Cigars. And you know what? In the future, we'll go ahead and maybe we'll do it next Monday again. Maybe we might adjust the time because it's getting a little dark. And you know what? We got about another maybe good 3 or 4 weeks left of nice weather in Wisconsin if we're lucky. And then it's going to go ahead and quickly turn into snow and cold on there. So thank you for everybody that did turn in live. And if you're watching on recorded, put a topic in there, do a little discussion, chat it up. This is what it's for, to be able to go ahead and communicate and reach out to other people. So thank you very much. 73s, take care. We'll catch you next week.